A blonde girl's face contorts in tearful desperation as she makes a final, desperate plea. She stands in the center of the classroom, frantically begging her classmates for friendship. The digital clock on the wall ticks down, showing only 17 seconds left. With the number above her head now at 0, she collapses to her knees in utter despair. The sound of approaching footsteps adds a new layer of dread to the room. Her desperate begging turns into a raw scream of absolute terror. Without warning, the classroom door slides open with violent force. A sinister figure in a white coat appears, pointing and mocking her failure. As the timer finally hits 0, he announces that her penalty is about to begin. She can only stare up from the floor, surrounded by the classmates who sealed her fate. The figure addresses the entire class, delivering a chilling verdict on social failure. He lunges forward, screaming that anyone who fails the friendship test doesn't deserve a future. In a flash, a violent burst of pink energy erupts, marking the brutal end of her game. A boy with glasses watches in horror, realizing their classroom has become a twisted nightmare. From the back of the room, another student observes the fallen girl and the marked classmates, sitting in silence. The girl lies motionless, a grim reminder of the game that apparently began just yesterday. A flashback reveals a starkly different scene. A normal, lively classroom full of friends. In that past, a quiet student named Hayato Makabe kept to himself, absorbed in a book. His peace was constantly interrupted by the loud chatter of his more popular classmates. Suddenly, two girls turn their attention to him, their friendly masks replaced with unsettling glares. He rises from his desk, a somber atmosphere surrounding him. With no other choice, he heads to the water fountain for a meager lunch. He drinks directly from the tap, trying to ignore his gnawing hunger. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps signals trouble. A girl shoves him from behind, slamming his face into the water stream. The blonde, Myakuzuka, scolds him for getting in her way. Soaked and shocked, he attempts to defend himself against the false accusation. Her friends join in, mocking his poverty and his water-only meal. Humiliated, he can only stand there, unable to find the words to fight back. The trio walks away, dismissing him as a bottom feeder, not worth their time. He stares at his bruised reflection in the window, the sting of humiliation fresh on his mind. Trying to compose himself, he splashes water on his face, simmering with frustration. With a deep breath, he straightens up, resolved to walk back into the classroom. He slides the door open, re-entering the room, where his tormentors are waiting. Instantly, every student turns to stare, their silent judgment filling the air. The mockery begins immediately, with a classmate loudly accusing him of being too poor to wash at home. A chorus of cruel laughter erupts as his classmates invent new ways to ridicule him. He ignores them all, heading silently toward the small sanctuary of his desk. But before he can even sit, a powerful kick sends his desk flying sideways. He looks on in shock, his last refuge in the classroom violently taken from him. A man in a white coat named Myakuzuka arrives, calling the students promising test subjects, dispatched by the government. The students whisper among themselves, confused by the sudden appearance of a supposed new teacher. He places a briefcase with a strange pink splatter on the desk, and prepares to open it. With a chilling smile, he confirms he is a teacher of sorts, ready to begin his lesson. He pulls out a vial of contact lenses, announcing it's a government order for everyone to wear them immediately. Myakuzuka walks through the aisles, handing out the vials as students express their uncertainty. A boy with glasses examines the device, learning it can automatically adjust to any visual acuity. He inserts the lens, amazed by the advanced technology, but still questioning the government's motives. The entire class now sits in silence, each student having complied with the strange order. With a crazed look, Myakuzuka slams the desk and declares the experiment has officially begun. A student voices the class's confusion, questioning the purpose of a contact lens experiment. Suddenly Hayato's vision shifts, the contact lens revealing a strange new layer to his reality. He's stunned to see glowing numbers floating above everyone's heads, a digital tag on each classmate. Myakuzuka reveals the device's name, the friend counter, explaining the numbers represent their social connections. He then drops a bombshell, declaring them all test subjects in a government-run friendship culling project. The teacher clarifies the rules, confining this twisted social experiment to the walls of their classroom. A clock on the wall begins a 24-hour countdown, sealing their fate within the isolated group. The students listen in horror, as he explains that after 24 hours, The game will claim its first victim. A smug student quickly grasps the deadly rule. The person with the lowest friend count will be eliminated. Myakuzuka confirms the deadline and adds a crucial detail: friendships require mutual consent to be counted. A student with glasses shouts in protest, unable to accept the twisted reality of their situation. Myakuzuka's crazed expression confirms that the threat of elimination is deadly serious. Another boy scoffs at the warning, defiantly trying to remove the contact lens from his eye. The moment his finger touches the lens, a strange pink energy begins to corrupt his eye. A violent burst of pink energy erupts from his face, a brutal penalty for his disobedience. He collapses onto his desk, a grim example of what happens when the rules are broken. Myakuzuka reveals the horrifying truth. Removing the contacts releases a substance that affects the brain. Hayato stares forward in shock, the glowing zero above his head a terrifying reminder of his own vulnerability. The pink splatter on the teacher's briefcase suddenly makes a lot more sense. Myakuzuka leans in, driving home the lesson that in this game, social connections are a matter of life and death. Myakuzuka coldly advises the terrified students to use their intellect to survive. The classroom descends into a quiet panic, each student isolated by the glowing number above their head. Hayato clutches his head in despair, overwhelmed by the impossible task of making friends in 24 hours. Realizing his social isolation is a death sentence, he resolves that his only chance is to escape. He bolts from the room, sprinting down the deserted hallway in a desperate bid for freedom. Panting and determined, he pushes onward, the glowing zero a constant reminder of his vulnerability. His escape plan hits a wall, as he spots Myakuzuka casually descending the stairs, blocking his path. Turning back, he's surprised to see another student trying to pry open a window further down the hall. He notices the student's zero is a different color, realizing they must be from another class. Hayato approaches the stranger, sensing a potential ally in their shared goal of escaping the school. The blue-haired student calmly agrees to their desperate escape plan. Hearing footsteps, Hayato panics and urges his new ally to jump out the window first. Without a second thought, the other student climbs out, ready to make the leap. He jumps from the second floor, landing hard on the ground below, as Hayato watches. But the moment he lands, a brutal pink energy bursts from his eyes, signaling a horrifying penalty. Hayato stares down in disbelief, realizing the escape attempt was a deadly trap. Before he can process the horror, a hand clamps down firmly on his shoulder from behind. He turns to find a menacing, white-haired student, questioning his actions with a chilling glare. The stranger accuses him of callously using the other boy to test the consequences of escaping. Hayato breaks into a cold sweat, frantically denying the cold-blooded accusation. The stranger reveals this experiment isn't about friendship, but a much harsher lesson in survival. He explains that, just like in the real world, you build trust only to manipulate others. The ultimate goal, he states, is to use those you've deceived as stepping stones to save yourself. A grim visual of ants swarming illustrates the fate of those who are used and discarded. The white-haired student turns his unnerving gaze on Hayato, noting his vulnerable zero-friend status. With a predatory smile, he warns that being the weakest makes him an easy target for everyone else. Hayato trembles, the chilling implication of the stranger's words finally sinking in. Night falls over the school, trapping the students inside as the clock continues to tick down. In another classroom, students eat and chat, a stark contrast to Hayato's isolated reality. He sits alone at his desk, too overwhelmed by his situation to even have an appetite. He desperately wishes someone would befriend him, but his classmates are already in their own groups. But then a chilling thought occurs: his survival means someone else's demise. The stranger's warning haunts him, as he realizes the class intends to sacrifice him for their own safety. He sees with resentment, questioning why his social status has become a death sentence. A sudden announcement from the PA system declares that smartphone communications are now permitted. The catch is revealed: any mention of the experiment is strictly forbidden and will be censored. Students immediately pull out their phones to contact the outside world, feigning normalcy. Suddenly, Hayato's phone buzzes, pulling him from his dark thoughts. He sees a message from someone named Kiyosaki, a small, caring reminder of the world outside. His response is cold and transactional, simply demanding money with a click of his tongue. His expression sours as he reads his own message, a grim reminder that his conversations always come down to money. The scene shifts to the past, showing a younger Hayato, trudging up the stairs to his apartment at dusk. He walks with a heavy heart down the open-air corridor, his destination just ahead. As he nears his front door, he's stopped by the sound of a woman's strange, ecstatic cries from inside. He listens with a deadpan expression, as the voice inside begs to be filled with fortune. Peeking through the doorway, he sees his mother with an unfamiliar man. The two are engaged in a bizarre ritual, with the man holding his mother's shoulders as she chants. Golden talismans rain down, as they celebrate the successful summoning of abundant fortune. The man turns, greeting Hayato with a wide, unsettling grin, and commenting on how much he's grown. He then performs a blessing, showering the unimpressed Hayato with the golden paper. His mother snaps a photo, completely enthralled by the strange ritual. The small apartment reveals another family member, a young girl sitting quietly in the corner. The girl, his sister Kiyosaki, looks up and acknowledges his return. The cult leader turns his unsettling attention toward the young girl. He leans in with a disturbing proposition, making Kiyosaki visibly uncomfortable. Their mother, however, seems to encourage the interaction, completely lost in her delusion. The man then shifts his focus to Hayato, suggesting it's time for him to join their practices. His face twists into a fanatical grin, as he speaks of financial offerings to their cause. The mother presents a banknote, explaining it's the money Hayato has provided. The leader drapes an arm over Hayato, pressuring him to start earning more for their group. His mother casually suggests that his sister is now old enough to participate in their strange practices. In a panic, Hayato grabs his sister, desperately warning her to stay away from the cult's headquarters. His mother's furious voice cuts through his warning, her face contorted with rage. She violently shoves him, her fanatical devotion overriding any maternal instinct. He recoils in shock, as she questions his sanity, demanding to know if he understands the consequences of not storing fortune. She screams in his face, threatening him with eternal misery for defying their beliefs. Back in the present, the weight of his past and current nightmare crushes him, as he reflects on his hopeless situation. He feels himself falling into an abyss of despair, questioning the point of a next life, when this one is already a living hell. He stares at his phone. The contrast between his sister's caring message and his own blunt demand for money hitting him hard. Tears of regret and frustration splash onto the screen, blurring the words that define his broken relationships. A single thought cuts through his despair. He has to survive for his sister. Kisaki's reassuring message reminds him that he's not entirely alone in the world. Fueled by a new sense of purpose, he vows to make it out of this nightmare alive. He gets up from his desk, deciding to clear his head and wash away his tears. With renewed determination, he walks down the empty school corridor toward the restroom. His solitary walk is interrupted when he spots another student standing awkwardly in the hall. A girl named Ami Shirano, with a friend count of 3, waits nervously outside the men's room door. He walks past her but hesitates at the last second, deciding to speak to her. Before she can respond, he steps into the restroom, the door sliding shut. Confused by his sudden approach, she turns and asks what he wants. With a bright smile, Ami Shirano offers him a chance at friendship. Hayato is stunned into silence, completely caught off guard by the sudden proposal. He stares down at her, unable to comprehend why anyone would want to befriend him. Just then, 2 other girls rush over, excitedly grabbing Ami and pulling her away. Ami tries to protest as her friends cheerfully interrupt her conversation with Hayato. They insist on talking to her immediately, leaving him standing alone in the hallway. He proceeds into the men's room, the door closing on the bizarre moment. While drying his hands, he tries to process the confusing interaction he just had. He slides the classroom door open, heading back to his desk. Inside, he sees Ami already back with her group, laughing and chatting away. Hayato tries to follow up with Ami, but his bully, Mnahwa, cuts him off with a sharp insult. Mai glares at him, angrily demanding to know why he's bothering her friend. He tries to explain his desperate situation, but Mai's expression only hardens with contempt. She mockingly asks the entire class if anyone would ever want to be friends with someone like him. Mai then reveals a golden charm, announcing it's a worthless trinket his mother sold her father for a fortune. Hayato is stunned into silence, realizing the true cost of his mother's fanatical beliefs. She cruelly suggests his mother used unsavory means to get money, flashing a photo of her once happy family. With bitterness in her voice, she blames his mother's scam for destroying her family and causing her parents' divorce. He can only offer a weak apology, trying to distance himself from his mother's actions. In a final act of disgust, she rips the expensive charm apart, revealing the grotesque item hidden inside. Mai unleashes her fury, accusing him of destroying her family's happiness. Hayato coldly retorts, suggesting his death would be the ultimate fortune for everyone. The day wears on, the school standing silent under the afternoon sun. The clock on the wall ticks ominously, showing less than an hour left in the game. He panics, haunted by visions of the brutal penalties, knowing he's next on the list. Elsewhere in the classroom, Mai approaches a classmate named Shiho, demanding to borrow her book. Shiho hesitates, clutching the new book she hasn't even finished reading yet. Mai's friendly demeanor vanishes as she threatens to revoke their friendship over the trivial matter. Defeated, Shiho hands over the book, while Mai smugly lectures her on the value of friendship. From across the room, two other students whisper about Mai's manipulative behavior, with Hayato watching in the background. Hayato watches them, bitterly noting their trivial concerns, while his life is on the line. He grips his head in a panic, realizing he has no viable plan to survive. Suddenly, a desperate idea forms. He'll use his own manga to bargain with Mai. He reaches into his desk, hoping this small offering will be enough to save him. His eyes widen in disbelief, as he finds his desk is not as he left it. In a frantic rush, he empties his desk onto the floor, discovering his manga is gone. The shocking realization hits him: someone must have stolen it from his desk. He can't comprehend the kind of person who would resort to theft in a life-or-death game. A flashback to Mai's earlier actions makes everything click into place with horrifying clarity. Looking across the room, he identifies Mai as the one who took his last chance at survival. He questions Mai's motives, noticing she isn't even reading the book she just took. With only 14 minutes left on the clock, he knows he needs a new plan, and fast. The other girl's conversation reveals Mai has a habit of borrowing things and never returning them. A sudden, brilliant idea strikes Hayato, as he connects the dots. He quickly pulls out his smartphone, a new strategy forming in his mind. A quick search confirms his suspicion, his expression shifting to one of grim certainty. Tapping his foot with newfound resolve, he prepares to confront the situation head-on. He approaches the two girls, asking for specific details about the dictionary Mai borrowed. The girl is stunned, wondering how he could possibly know what her dictionary looked like. Hayato reveals his phone screen, showing them proof that Mai sold the stolen item online a week ago. The girl stares at the screen in disbelief, recognizing her dictionary, despite the name being scribbled out. She marches up to Mai, furiously accusing her of stealing and selling her property online. Mai casually dismisses the accusation, pretending she has no idea what's going on. The girl shoves the phone forward, insisting the seller's account is undeniably Mai's. Her friend tries to calm her down, whispering a warning about the consequences of angering Mai. But as she looks closer at the phone, her own expression shifts to one of stunned realization. Her shock turns to rage, as she spots her own borrowed DVD set listed for sale on the same account. She erupts in anger, revealing the DVD set was autographed, and now Mai's betrayal is unforgivable. Mai remains, completely unfazed, coolly challenging them to prove the account is hers. Just then, Hayato steps into the confrontation, calmly demanding to see Mai's phone. Hayato reveals his phone, showing a listing for his rare, limited edition manga. A classmate connects the dots, realizing the recent notification sound was a purchase confirmation. Mai stares at her phone as the purchase notification comes through, her friend count glowing above her. He confronts her directly, revealing he just bought his own stolen manga, and demands to see her screen. Mai furiously denies the accusation, trying to bluff her way out of the corner she's in. Hayato leans in, explaining he set the shipping date weeks in advance to expose her. He then pulls out the manga he'd already retrieved, declaring he'll just take it now. Turning his back on Mai, he hands the manga to one of her former friends, as a thank you. The girl makes a bold declaration, announcing she's ending her friendship with a thief. Mai looks on in disbelief, a question mark appearing by her friend count as her social world collapses. Another girl joins the exodus, deciding Hayato is a better choice than a thief. Her former friends realize Mai was the one who orchestrated Hayato's isolation in the first place. They agree her manipulative nature is frightening, and point out her friend count has plummeted. Mai's face contorts in shock, as the number above her head drops to a solitary one. Her last remaining friend casually waves goodbye, severing their ties as she begs him to stop. The final number glitches out, flickering from 1 to a terrifying 0. She collapses to the floor, screaming in absolute despair, as her fate is sealed. The clock on the wall ticks down, showing just over 4 minutes left in the game. With a look of pure rage, she accuses her classmates of being dirty traitors. Her ex-friends just list her annoying habits, confirming they're done with her for good. One of Mai's former friends calmly reads a book, admitting she always disliked being in the same class. Another ex-friend coldly tells the terrified Mai that this outcome is entirely her own fault. Hayato watches the scene unfold with a satisfied smirk, feeling a sense of vindication. The girl who just abandoned Mai turns to Hayato, and unexpectedly offers her friendship. Stunned by the offer, his friend count glitches from 0 to 1, as he processes the request. The other girl, whose dictionary was stolen, also asks to be his friend, seeing him as a better ally. With his friend count now at 2, Hayato breathes a sigh of relief, realizing he's finally safe from elimination. Mai's eyes fill with pure terror, as she watches her social standing crumble, and her fate sealed. With only 3 minutes left, she crawls on the floor, desperately trying to escape the inevitable. Her face contorts in a final, tearful scream of horror, as the countdown nears its end. She desperately offers to pay for past favors, begging to be friends again. Her former friends mockingly reject her, stating they simply want nothing to do with a thief. She looks around the classroom in a panic, her pleas falling on deaf ears. With tears streaming down her face, she makes one last, desperate appeal for anyone to save her. Her begging intensifies as she frantically asks the entire class for friendship, but no one moves. With only 17 seconds left on the clock, the other students watch with growing unease. On her knees, she promises to do anything, her face a mask of absolute horror. Suddenly, the classroom door slides open with violent force, signaling the game master's arrival. Myakuzuka appears in the doorway, theatrically mocking her for failing to control her social standing. Defeated and terrified, she can only stare blankly, as the number above her head flickers, her time finally up. A violent burst of pink energy erupts from her, a brutal consequence for losing the game. Hayato watches in stunned silence, realizing he has survived, and can now see his sister again. Myakuzuka delivers a chilling lecture, explaining how easily people fall into ruin over trivial matters. As figures in hazmat suits clean up, he explains her obsession with petty cash cost her everyone's trust. He concludes that because she lost their trust, no one was willing to save her. As her body is carried away, he declares that her actions earned her the ultimate punishment. The remaining students can only watch in fear, clinging to each other for support. With a terrifying grin, he announces the next round's horrifying rule: only the largest friend group will survive. Hayato stares in disbelief, unable to process that the deadly game is far from over. The camera focuses on a new number, revealing a student with a staggering 8 friends. A boy with glasses points out that all their friend counts have reset to 0. The clock confirms a new 24-hour deadline, ending during 5th period, the next day. He contemplates the grim reality that only the largest friend group will be spared. A sudden realization dawns on him, a potential way for them all to survive. He passionately announces to the class that he's found a way to save everyone. The white-haired student observes this hopeful outburst with a cold, unimpressed stare. A classmate with glasses asks him to elaborate on his optimistic plan. He explains that if the entire class befriends each other, they'll form one single, unbeatable group. 2 girls excitedly grasp the concept, understanding that this time, no one has to be sacrificed. Elsewhere, a student named Tomitaka smirks, clearly unimpressed by this peaceful solution. Tomitaka scoffs at the idea of unity, declaring he's very selective about who he considers a friend. The white-haired student watches the unfolding drama with a twisted grin, finding the conflict highly entertaining. Another group, led by a silver-haired student, confidently walks past Tomitaka, who seems to have been knocked over. It's revealed that Tomitaka's clique has already formed, boasting a solid 5 members. He finishes his drink with a flourish, a picture of smug confidence. With a wide grin, he confirms that his entire chosen group has assembled. The camera reveals the true scale of his alliance, a massive group of 12 students, already dominating the game. The boy with glasses stares in shock, realizing his plan for unity is already falling apart. He quickly calculates that Tomitaka's group has secured the majority, leaving everyone else powerless. He desperately confronts Tomitaka, pleading with him to reconsider and save the entire class from another elimination. Tomi talks at the plea for unity, comparing his classmate to a gasping fish. The remaining students realize the grim reality. It's either join his group, or face elimination. A green-haired student named Sora Hosoya tells the idealist he's missing the obvious point. He gestures toward Tomitaka's expensive gold watch as proof of his social standing. He then points out the flashy earring that signals his wealth and influence. The final piece of evidence is the gleaming gold necklace around his neck. Sora explains that Tomitaka is just a show-off who craves attention, and he knows exactly how to play him. He immediately puts his plan into action, fawning over Tomitaka and begging to join his group. Tomitaka's ego is easily stroked, and he smugly welcomes his new follower aboard. Just like that, the number above Sora's head updates to 13, securing his place in the winning faction. Tomitaka offers the class a simple choice: join his guaranteed survival group, or face elimination. Two girls nervously weigh the grim ultimatum, their survival hanging in the balance. Their fear quickly turns to desperation, as they clamor to be accepted into the dominant faction. Sora smugly explains to the idealist that manipulating people with flattery is the key to success. He then urges his friend to abandon his principles and join Tomitaka's group to survive. But Sora suddenly remembers a crucial detail he forgot to mention about joining the group. Another student reveals the catch: survival comes with a hefty price tag of 100,000 yen. Both Sora and the idealist are stunned into silence by the unexpected financial demand. The student Jitsu smirks, confirming that his friendship can be bought, but it isn't cheap. Sora is electrocuted with shock, unable to comprehend the outrageous cost of staying alive. A girl panics, realizing she can't afford the steep price of survival. The idealist stares in disbelief, questioning the cruel, transactional nature of their game. The white-haired student relishes the chaos, explaining how this death game is a perfect hunting ground for predators. Unwilling to give up, the idealist makes one last passionate plea for unity to save everyone. The observer patronizingly agrees that his idealistic plan is indeed beautiful and correct. He then dismisses this notion, suggesting such noble thoughts are useless in their current reality. With a final taunt, he waves goodbye from the window, leaving them to their own devices. Tomitaka holds up his phone, casually announcing he's ready to accept digital payments for friendship. He then reveals his true price with a greedy grin, demanding 1,000,000 yen from each student. The remaining students stand together in a small, isolated group, unable to pay the exorbitant fee. Sora turns to Hayato in desperation, begging for a loan to survive. Hayato flatly refuses, revealing he doesn't even have that kind of money for himself. Tomitaka smugly beckons them over, acting as if he's offering a generous deal. His followers join in, pressuring the outcasts to use their phones and get money from outside sources. Sora looks at his phone in despair, admitting he's too poor and friendless to raise the funds. Losing his patience, Tomitaka screams that he'll raise the price if they don't hurry. Other students are already making calls, lying to their parents about needing money for educational materials. A girl cries in terror, realizing she'll be eliminated if she can't come up with the cash. The idealist calls for calm, trying to rally the small group of students who can't pay. He lays out a new plan, explaining that if they unite, they only need to poach 2 people to win. Tomitaka smirks, completely unthreatened by the idealist's desperate plan for unity. A purple-haired girl interrupts, telling the idealist that poaching members from that group is impossible. She reveals Tomitaka's social media, showing him flaunting an absurd amount of wealth. The idealist is stunned, unable to comprehend how a student could possess such riches. The girl explains a rumor that Tomitaka runs a pyramid scheme, selling get-rich-quick materials. She adds that it's just a rumor, but the expensive watch on his wrist tells a different story. It's revealed that Tomitaka is buying loyalty, offering money and goods in exchange for cooperation. He's shown surrounded by followers, literally showering them with gifts, to secure his dominant position. A girl named Shiori erupts in protest, declaring that buying friends is fundamentally wrong. She argues that his followers should value human lives more than the expensive trinkets he gives them. Tomitaka casually lights a cigarette, completely ignoring Shiori's moral argument. Shiori desperately tries to rally his followers, reminding them that 10 lives are on the line. Unimpressed, Tomitaka approaches one of his own members with a smug request. He grabs the student's arm, who looks on in confusion as Tomitaka holds the lit cigarette. With a cruel grin, he challenges her definition of petty cash. He then demonstrates the loyalty he's bought by pressing the lit end against his follower's arm. Checking his expensive watch, He coldly lectures them on the undeniable power of money. He presents the follower's marked arm as proof that his loyalty can't be swayed by mere words. With a powerful stomp on a desk, he declares that their transactional friendship is unbreakable. He then turns back to the outcasts, demanding they pay the 100,000 yen if they want to live. Shiori bites her lip, her moral resolve clearly shaken by Tomitaka's brutal display. The remaining outcasts try to stand firm, defiantly declaring their lives are worth more than money. The idealist grits his teeth in frustration, his plan for unity completely shattered. Terrified by the memory of the last penalty, another student caves and begs to join Tomitaka's side. The blonde girl realizes their small group of dissenters is shrinking fast, leaving them even more vulnerable. Their shock turns to disbelief as Shiori, the most vocal opponent, silently turns to leave them. Tomitaka smugly welcomes his newest follower, leaving Shiori's old friend stunned by the betrayal. The blonde girl stares in horror, unable to believe her childhood friend would abandon her. Shiori justifies her decision, arguing that survival is worth any price, even 1,000,000 yen. Suddenly, the idealist is addressed by a new, almost reverent title, catching him completely off guard. The idealist, Wataru Sasaba, prostrates himself on the floor, in a desperate plea to join the dominant group. He looks up, explaining that his sick parents make it impossible for him to pay the exorbitant fee. Tomitaka considers the request, deciding to offer him a single chance to prove his worth. He clarifies that this chance won't be free, as it would be unfair to his paying members. Wataru eagerly agrees to do anything, a promise Tomitaka seems ready to exploit. With a smug grin, Tomitaka announces that Wataru must first pass an entrance exam. Wataru looks up in confusion, completely bewildered by the concept of an exam in this situation. Tomitaka clarifies the test. Wataru must prove he can provide labor, equivalent to the 100,000 yen fee. He reveals he's been having trouble at the school gate, hinting at the dangerous nature of the task. Tomitaka grabs Wataru's shoulder, with a menacing grip, asserting his dominance before giving the order. Tomitaka reveals the test, ordering Wataru to get rid of some troublemakers. He then turns to his subordinate, Ken, and tells him to handle the situation. Ken's fist glows with a menacing red energy, as he accepts the command without question. Ken, identified as Ken Takano, removes his ring and presents a shocking challenge to Wataru. Wataru is completely bewildered by the sudden and bizarre instruction. Ken tenses up, bracing himself for the impact, with a determined expression. In a flash, Ken lands a heavy blow, showing the brutal reality of the test. Wataru stumbles back, stunned and hurt from the unexpected strike. Ken angrily scolds him for hesitating, his patience clearly wearing thin. Overwhelmed, Wataru falls to his knees, the harsh reality of his exam sinking in. Wataru looks up in tearful agony, the physical and emotional toll of the test showing on his face. Ken mocks his pathetic display, dismissing him as completely useless in a fight. Unmoved, Tomitaka orders his subordinate to continue the brutal lesson. Ken hesitates for a moment, pointing out that Wataru clearly has no will to fight back. Tomitaka insists, telling Ken to give Wataru a very specific and terrifying reminder. Leaning in close, Ken uses the memory of Mai's elimination as a chilling motivator. The gruesome image of Mai's fate flashes in his mind, a stark warning of what's at stake. Fueled by pure terror, Wataru lets out a desperate cry and charges forward with newfound aggression. He tackles Ken with surprising force, catching the larger student completely off guard. The clumsy but desperate attack lands, eliciting a pained reaction from Ken. Wataru's desperate tackle sends Ken sprawling to the floor, stunning the onlookers. Enraged by the hit, Ken shouts in pain and fury, his pride clearly wounded. Wataru retaliates with a surprisingly forceful blow, landing a solid strike on Ken's face. The impact sends Ken flying backward, shattering the classroom window upon collision. Furious at being embarrassed, Ken grabs Wataru by the collar, escalating the confrontation. Hayato shouts a desperate warning, reminding them of the grim fate that awaits anyone who goes outside. Ignoring the danger, Ken grabs Wataru's face, his anger overriding all caution. Wataru's expression shifts to pure terror, as he's manhandled near the broken window. In a shocking display of cruelty, Ken dangles Wataru upside down out of the second-story opening. Wataru reaches out in a panic, his life now hanging precariously in the balance. A brutal burst of pink energy erupts from Wataru's face, the price for breaking the rules. Ken stares down from the broken window, completely stunned by the sudden turn of events. His shock turns to confusion as he tries to process the horrifying outcome of his actions. Hayato grits his teeth, disgusted by the cruel and predictable result of the test. He explains to the remaining outcasts that any attempt to leave the building is a fatal mistake. Tomitaka casually congratulates Ken, callously dismissing Wataru as a mere scarecrow. Ken realizes with dawning horror that the outcome of their fight was predetermined. Tomitaka reveals the brutal lesson was meant to justify the high price his followers paid for safety. Ken collapses to his knees, shaken by the realization that he was just a pawn who could have easily been sacrificed. Tomitaka looms over him, ready to assert his authority over his terrified subordinate. Tomitaka slaps one of his own followers, reminding everyone of his absolute authority. With a cigarette dangling from his lips, he glares menacingly and demands a light. The student eagerly complies, holding up a lighter to serve his leader. Hayato watches the display of power, a grim understanding dawning on his face. He explains to the others that Wataru was never going to be accepted, leaving them with the impossible task of raising the money. Hayato clenches his fist in frustration, the lack of funds a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. He realizes Tomitaka's greed won't end with the game, and resolves to break his tyrannical control. Sora looks at him in disbelief, questioning how they could possibly challenge their powerful classmate. He points out that Tomitaka's combination of wealth and influence makes him seem completely untouchable. Under immense pressure, Hayato grits his teeth, desperately trying to formulate a counter. Sora's phone buzzes, and he nervously checks a new message from his mother. She threatens to sell his late father's cherished book collection for cash. He glares with frustration. The timing of his family's financial troubles couldn't be worse. With a quick swipe, he begins to type out a desperate response. He begs her not to sell the books, explaining they're the only mementos he has left of his father. A bittersweet memory surfaces of a happier time, reading those same books with his dad. His mother coldly dismisses his plea, so he offers his last bit of money to save the books. Hayato realizes Sora's money will just end up in the hands of another greedy cult leader. He glances at Tomitaka, seeing how easily his classmates are swayed by a flashy exterior. Hayato draws a parallel between the cult leader and Tomitaka, recognizing they're two sides of the same manipulative coin. A sudden realization hits him, a plan forming around a stack of papers. He decides that to beat a manipulator, he has to become one himself. With newfound resolve, he turns on his heel, ready to put his plan into motion. He abruptly leaves the classroom, ignoring his classmates' confused questions. He sprints down the hall with a clear purpose, searching for a specific resource. His destination is revealed to be the school library. Inside, he quickly scans the shelves, hunting for the key to his new strategy. He pulls out a thick illustrated encyclopedia of plants, the exact item he was looking for. A confident grin spreads across his face, as he declares this book will be their salvation. As the sun sets, the school clock serves as a grim reminder that their time is running out. The classroom remains divided, with the outcasts huddled together, as Tomitaka's faction watches them. Sora slams his desk in frustration, worried that Hayato still hasn't returned with a plan. He and the girl beside him flinch, startled by a sudden voice from across the room. Tomitaka, looking for entertainment, proposes a game, and offers friendship as the prize. His large group of followers stands behind him, their high friend counts glowing with smug confidence. The blonde girl warns Sora not to make eye contact, terrified of drawing their attention. Tomitaka grins, announcing he's looking for someone with a fighting spirit to challenge him. He then targets Sora directly, taunting him for cowering in the corner. Deciding to escalate things, Tomitaka rises from his seat with purpose. He strolls toward the outcasts with a predatory grin, ready to assert his dominance. He dismisses the previous incident as an accident, claiming he was going to let Wataru join anyway. Tomitaka feigns a moment of humanity, insisting he doesn't want to see anyone else get hurt. His expression shifts to a sly grin, as he proposes a new game, a tug-of-war challenge. Sora looks up in confusion, completely bewildered by the sudden and childish suggestion. Tomitaka confidently brushes off their concerns, reassuring them that it's just a simple game. Night has fallen over the school, the clock tower a silent witness to the unfolding drama. A makeshift rope lies on the floor, pitting Sora and the blonde girl against a single, smaller student. Surrounded by his followers, Tomitaka sits like a king, and smugly asks if they're ready to begin. Sora immediately objects, pointing out the blatant unfairness of the mismatched teams. The camera reveals their opponent is a lone, nervous girl, highlighting the cruelty of the challenge. Tomitaka cruelly suggests the match should be easy, pitting them against their former friend, Sure. With a predatory grin, he declares that all the players for his twisted game are now assembled. He then taunts the opposing team, confidently asking if they're ready for the challenge. Just then, 2 more students enter the room, each carrying a mysterious blue bucket. They place the heavy-looking buckets on the floor, adding another layer of mystery to the game. Sora stares at the strange items, completely baffled by this new development. Tomitaka's face twists into a sinister smile as he reveals the buckets contain their special glass slippers. The blonde girl's eyes widen in horror as she realizes the terrifying implication of his words. Inside the bucket, sharp, glittering shards of glass confirm their worst fears. He coldly informs them that participation isn't optional, leaving them with no way out. Sora and the blonde girl exchange a worried glance, their zero-friend status leaving them completely vulnerable. Tomitaka's crew looms over them with cruel smiles, their massive friend count a clear show of power. With no other choice, the blonde girl reluctantly lifts her foot to step into the ominous blue bucket. Her foot sinks into the bucket, the contents inside promising a painful experience. She grits her teeth and lets out a silent scream, the sharp contents of the bucket causing immediate distress. Tomitaka's grin widens as he impatiently orders them to get on with the cruel game. Now standing in both buckets, the girl trembles in agony, tears streaming down her face. One of Tomitaka's lackeys turns his aggression on Sora, demanding he take his turn. Sora's face contorts with rage and helplessness, knowing he's trapped in their sadistic game. He finally submits, stepping into the bucket and bracing for the inevitable consequence. With a sharp snap of his fingers, Tomitaka signals the start of his twisted game. Urged on by the crowd, Shiori pulls with all her might against her former friends. One of Tomitaka's followers reminds her of the grim consequences should she fail to win. Driven by fear, Shiori screams with renewed determination, ready to do whatever it takes. The blonde girl cries out in agony, begging her old friend to stop the brutal game. Shiori apologizes through tears, admitting her fear of Tomitaka's wrath outweighs their friendship. Sora lets out a pained cry, struggling to keep his balance on the sharp contents of the buckets. The inevitable happens as both Sora and the blonde girl collapse to the floor in defeat. The aftermath reveals the painful contents of the bucket scattered across the floor. The scene cuts away to Hayato, whose glowing zero reflects his continued isolation from the chaos. Hayato bursts back into the room, demanding to know what cruel game is being played. Sora looks up from the floor, explaining he was trying to win a spot in Tomitaka's group. He insists on leaving with them, terrified of what will happen if he's left behind. Tomitaka's group taunts him, but Sora believes this is his only path to survival. Hayato helps his 2 injured classmates, supporting them as they limp out of the classroom. By the dim light of a single candle, one of them lets out a sharp cry of pain. Hayato carefully tends to Sora's foot, removing the painful remnants of Tomitaka's game. Sora pulls away, telling Hayato to stop, having resigned himself to being eliminated. He argues that staying with them will cost him his only chance to join the winning side. Hayato calmly declares that groveling to Tomitaka isn't the only way they can survive this. Sora listens with a mix of hope and skepticism, his glowing zero a constant reminder of their vulnerability. Hayato announces he has a plan that needs time, instructing them to wait and avoid Tomitaka's traps. As he walks away, Sora desperately calls out, not wanting to be abandoned in their dire situation. Hayato continues down the hall without looking back, leaving his 2 injured classmates behind. The clocks tick down with menacing speed, showing less than an hour left in the game. The blonde girl panics, asking Sora what they're supposed to do with so little time remaining. Sora looks away in frustration, admitting he has no idea how they can possibly survive this. Overcome with fear, the girl decides she can't just sit by and wait for her grim fate. She bursts back into the main classroom, ready to face Tomitaka's group, as Sora watches in disbelief. One of Tomitaka's followers smirks, looking as if he expected them to come crawling back all along. Sora angrily dismisses Hayato, assuming he's either fled or been eliminated. The blonde girl turns her desperate plea directly to Tomitaka. She prostrates herself on the floor, willing to endure any test, to join his group. Tomitaka then shifts his attention to Sora, demanding to know his decision. Defeated, Sora accepts that groveling is his only remaining path to survival. He joins the girl on the floor, tearfully begging for a chance to prove his loyalty. A pair of pliers lands in front of them, glowing with a menacing red aura. They stare in horror as Tomitaka reveals the brutal nature of their new test. With a sadistic grin, Tomitaka officially begins his twisted entrance exam. Suddenly, an object flies across the room with incredible speed, interrupting the cruel game. Hayato appears in the doorway, reminding his friends he warned them not to take the exam. He steps into the classroom with a calm and determined expression, ready to act. Sora and the blonde girl look up in shock, demanding to know where he's been. The girl desperately pleads for Hayato to join them in begging for a spot in the group. Sora argues that they had no other choice but to grovel for their survival. Hayato walks past them, his foot stopping just short of the pliers on the floor. He kneels down, instructing them to stay in their own group and trust him. He then picks up the pliers and tosses them away, declaring the brutal test is over. Tomitaka's face contorts with rage, furious at having his authority challenged. Adjusting his glasses, Hayato confidently walks toward Tomitaka's throne, ready to make his move. Tomitaka furiously demands to know what Hayato means by disappearing. Hayato calmly clarifies that he's referring to Tomitaka's entire friend group. Tomitaka's face twists with rage, completely incensed by the bold challenge. He grabs a water bottle, making a grim threat about the fate of Hayato's group. With a furious shout, he hurls the bottle directly at Hayato's head. Hayato braces for the impact as the bottle flies toward him with incredible speed. The bottle lands harmlessly at his feet, leaving him completely untouched. With unwavering confidence, Hayato declares his group will become the largest, and calls out to 3 specific students. He turns to Ami and her friends, offering them a chance to join his side while they still can. The girls react with outrage, insisting they'd never switch, after paying for their spot. Tomitaka scoffs at Hayato's delusion, pointing out the massive gap in their group sizes. He confidently declares that the numbers are the only reality that matters. Hayato calmly adjusts his glasses, retorting that he's about to create a new reality. He reaches into a bag, ready to reveal the first part of his plan. Ignoring Tomitaka, Hayato calls out directly to his subordinate, Ken. Ken turns away from his group, prompting a confused question from his leader. As Tomitaka shouts in protest, Ken walks over and stands before Hayato offers a handshake, and as Ken accepts, their friend counts both update to 4. The sudden shift in allegiance leaves the rest of Tomitaka's followers completely bewildered. Tomitaka erupts in a furious rage, demanding an explanation for Ken's betrayal. Ken's defection triggers a chain reaction, as more of Tomitaka's followers abandon him for Hayato's side. One of the students approaches Hayato, reminding him to uphold his end of their secret agreement. Sora and the remaining outcasts stare in disbelief, completely baffled by the sudden shift in power. Ami and her friends protest loudly, furious that the safety they paid for is rapidly disappearing. Tomitaka erupts in a furious rage, ordering his former followers to halt their mass exodus. He glares at Hayato's new faction, threatening them for daring to challenge his authority. In a symbolic gesture, one of the defectors tosses back a gold ring, given to him by Tomitaka. The student coldly declares that he no longer owes his former leader anything. Another boy follows his lead, removing a gifted bracelet to sever his own ties. A third student holds up a small, expensive earring, preparing to return the bribe and finalize her betrayal. One by one, the defectors place their expensive gifts on a desk, officially returning the bribes. Tomitaka and his remaining followers stare in shock, as their friend counts plummet to a mere 2. Ami and her friend can't believe it, questioning why Tomitaka's supposedly loyal followers are all leaving. With his own friend count now at 14, Hayato announces there are less than 20 minutes left on the clock. He then turns his attention to Ami and her 2 friends, the last of the holdouts. Ami glares back, completely bewildered by the sudden and dramatic shift in power. Seeing their side is lost, her 2 friends immediately abandon her and beg to join Hayato's winning team. Hayato calmly accepts their plea, further solidifying his group's dominance. Ami and the remaining few realize, with dawning horror, that they're the only ones left on the losing side. With her face cast in shadow, Ami clutches her uniform, contemplating her next move. Ami's former friends quickly switch sides, begging Hayato to let them join his no-dominant group. With a confident smile, Hayato graciously accepts the last of the defectors into his fold. Tomitaka stands completely alone, facing the massive new faction that has just overthrown him. His face contorts in disbelief as his friend count glitches and finally settles on a fatal 0. Hayato calmly reassures his original allies. Their friend count's now displaying a victorious 20. Sora and the blonde girl are overcome with relief, their faith in Hayato completely restored. The girl playfully calls out Sora for his earlier panic, reminding him he thought Hayato had abandoned them. Hayato just laughs it off, admitting their skepticism was understandable under the circumstances. Enraged and defeated, Tomitaka lunges at his former followers, screaming accusations of betrayal. He grabs one of the defectors by the collar, his reign of terror ending in a desperate, violent outburst. Hayato coldly dismisses Tomitaka's desperate outburst as pathetic. Overwhelmed by the numbers, Tomitaka clutches his throat, realizing he's completely powerless. The newly formed group stands united behind Hayato, their matching friend counts a symbol of their new allegiance. Defeated, Tomitaka admits Hayato outplayed him, and begs to join the winning side to save himself. Hayato flashes a wide, predatory grin, seemingly accepting his former rival's surrender. But he adds a single condition, causing Tomitaka to break out in a cold sweat. Hayato mockingly explains that he's very selective about his friends, turning Tomitaka's own words against him. The cruel irony isn't lost on Tomitaka, who stares in disbelief at being rejected. Sora and the blonde girl remind him that he's only getting a taste of his own medicine. Another student furiously recalls how he forced her and her best friend into a sadistic game against each other. One of the students furiously demands a refund, calling Tomitaka out for his arrogance. Cornered and desperate, Tomitaka grits his teeth and asks for Hayato's terms. Hayato delivers his condition with cold satisfaction. Tomitaka must surrender all of his money. The demand leaves Tomitaka utterly stunned, his face a picture of disbelief. Hayato clarifies the demand includes every last yen, which Tomitaka protests is far too steep. Hayato picks up the pliers, giving Tomitaka a chilling reminder of the alternative to paying up. The tool glows menacingly, turning Tomitaka's own sadistic test back on him. Defeated, he reluctantly reaches for his phone to comply with the demand. He reveals a massive bank balance, offering it all in a final, desperate bid for survival. But Hayato isn't finished, pointing out another valuable item Tomitaka still possesses. He reaches under a desk, retrieving a hidden red wallet. Hayato holds up the wallet, reminding Tomitaka he forgot something valuable. With less than 5 minutes on the clock, he tells Tomitaka that begging is a better option than haggling. The wallet is stuffed with cash, revealing another 2.5 million yen. Completely broken, Tomitaka prostrates himself on the floor, pleading to join Hayato's group. Hayato grips the cash, his anger building as he thinks about the consequences of this greed. He erupts in fury, accusing Tomitaka of sacrificing lives for the sake of mere paper. Hayato throws the money over Tomitaka, furiously questioning if it's worth more than a human life. Lying on the floor, a defeated Tomitaka mutters that life isn't a toy. Hayato glares down, delivering a final, chilling lesson about the value of friendship. The clock finally hits 0, signaling the end of the brutal second round. The survivors let out a collective sigh of relief, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and gratitude. While Hayato stands victorious, Tomitaka lies defeated on a desk, his reign officially over. His friends immediately crowd around him, desperate to know how he pulled off the impossible coup. Hayato simply presents a bag, revealing it stuffed with what appears to be a massive fortune in cash. He explains that at first glance, the stacks of 10,000 yen bills look incredibly convincing. A flashback reveals he used this money to bribe Tomitaka's followers one by one, while he was away. He then reveals the brilliant deception. The top bill was a color copy, and the rest was just blank paper. To sell the lie, he showed them a photo, claiming his mother was a cult's treasurer, who'd sent him the funds. Sora stares in disbelief at the audacity of the plan, but Hayato just smiles, knowing the result is all that counts. Sora explains how they split Tomitaka's real money, promising to pay Hayato back the rest of his loan. On the floor, a defeated Tomitaka realizes just how little it cost to buy his followers' loyalty. Myakuzuka reappears, lecturing on how people believe they're surrounded by noble ideals like friendship and trust. He reveals with a cold stare that in reality, those ideals were just a cover for greed. The game master warns that those who rely on deception often end up fooling themselves the most. He flashes a terrifying grin, clearly relishing the chaos and the lesson learned. Myakuzuka observes the survivors, noting that most of them wouldn't recognize true friendship anyway. With a mockingly cheerful tone, he congratulates the class and announces it's time for a break. He slides the door open with a sinister look, beckoning the students to follow him. The entire class obediently follows him down the hall, their fate still uncertain. Myakuzuka leads the class to the home economics room, gesturing for them to follow. Inside, they find the room has been transformed into a dining hall, leaving them completely bewildered. They discover assigned seating, with name cards placed at each spot around the tables. With a chilling smile, the game master instructs them to form groups of 7 at each table. He announces a celebratory party for the survivors, complete with a hot pot meal. Hayato and his friends stare at the steaming food, surprised by this unexpected reward. A student named Naohiko Kumimazaki raises his chopsticks with a casual request. He innocently asks the game master if there's any ponzu sauce available. Myakuzuka's friendly demeanor shatters, his eyes glowing with sudden, intense fury. He erupts in a rage over the sanctity of the broth, terrifying Naohiko into a hasty apology. As they eat, Ami wishes she could share the delicious meal with her little brothers. She smiles fondly, revealing she has 3 younger siblings who are a handful but cute. The mention of family makes Hayato jolt, reminding him of his own little sister. He gets choked up, and a classmate pats his back, telling him to eat more carefully. Across the table, 2 students admit they're surprised by Hayato's strategic thinking and survival skills. Another classmate jokingly wonders if Hayato's creepy fingernail charm is actually bringing him good luck. A girl scolds him for the morbid topic, while another recalls the charm belonged to Hayato's mother. One student dismisses the charm's power, but another warns her not to underestimate Hayato's capabilities. The boy who brought it up gets flustered, telling everyone to relax and enjoy their rare moment of peace. Trying to lighten the mood, a girl offers to serve more food, a small act of kindness in a tense situation. As Hayato eats, his classmates watch, a rare moment of normalcy returning to the group. Ami offers him more food from the hot pot, a small gesture of camaraderie in the tense atmosphere. Filled with renewed hope, Hayato vows they will all survive to see their families again, but their brief moment of peace is shattered as they notice their friend counts glitching erratically. The numbers suddenly reset, displaying a 5 for everyone at their 7-person table. Myakuzuka explains the new number simply reflects the size of their dining group. A student immediately points out the math doesn't add up, questioning the strange new count. With a twisted smile, the game master reveals the counter only registers true allies. He chillingly announces that anyone plotting to poison the group is not included in the count. The students stare at each other in horror, realizing 2 traitors are sitting at their table. With a sinister grin, Myakuzuka announces the next phase of the game, instructing them to open their chopstick sleeves. The students nervously comply, warned to keep the contents of their sleeves a complete secret. Inside, a folded paper reveals their assigned role, which they must then place back on the table. One of the papers reveals the terrifying role of banquet poisoner, confirming the traitors are among them. Hayato clenches his fists in frustration, realizing they've been thrown into yet another life-or-death scenario. The students exchange panicked glances, horrified that even after surviving, their lives are still on the line. He tightens his grip, silently vowing that he won't let anyone else become a victim. A simple diagram explains the new dynamic: innocent guests versus hidden poisoners. The game master reiterates that the friend counter only displays the number of true allies, excluding the traitors. He then mockingly encourages them to enjoy a friendly meal, knowing the paranoia has already set in. Hayato accepts the grim reality that if they can't escape, they have no choice but to play. Fueled by the memory of his sister, he hardens his resolve to survive, no matter the cost. The game master suddenly calls for the wolfman to enter the room. 3 imposing figures in suits with wolf heads appear to collect the chopstick sleeves. Myakuzuka announces that their deadly dinner party will unfold over 3 rounds. He explains that each round has a banquet phase where they must vote to exile 1 person. This is followed by a poisoning phase, where the remaining players eat from the hot pot. A purple-haired girl nervously raises her hand, asking what exile actually means. With a theatrical flourish, Myakuzuka declares that exile means being permanently cut off from the group. Suddenly, metal restraints snap into place around the girl, trapping her in her seat. The girl panics as she's bound to her chair, realizing exile is just a euphemism for elimination. He then reveals a cart of menacing tools, explaining how the exiled will be dealt with. The restraints tighten, and the students realize they're all trapped in their seats for the duration of the game. Even the more aggressive students find themselves locked in place, unable to escape the coming vote. A diagram explains the poisoning phase. The traitors will secretly choose one person to poison during each round. He reveals the poison is incredibly lethal, leaving the students to imagine the gruesome consequences. The grim announcement sends a wave of terror and suspicion through the group as they eye each other warily. The game master adds another cruel twist. Everyone must finish their entire meal, even if they suspect it's poisoned. The weight of the rules crushes them, realizing there's no way to avoid the poisoned food. He lays out the win condition. If the guests outnumber the poisoners after 3 rounds, the traitors will be the ones to face elimination. A diagram reveals the poisoners' win condition. If they match the guests in number, everyone else is eliminated. The students look on in confusion, as the game master hints that they've already figured out the game's theme. With a dramatic pose, he officially names their new ordeal Poisoning Werewolf. A girl gasps, in horror, realizing they've been thrown into yet another deadly game. Myakuzuka calmly tells them not to worry, a sinister smile playing on his lips. He then reveals a special twist for this round. An antidote can neutralize the poison. The game master explains a new role, the antidote master, who can save one person per round. However, there's a crucial catch: the antidote master is unable to save themselves. With a theatrical flourish, he officially begins the first banquet phase, signaling the start of the vote. Hayato and Ami exchange a nervous glance, as the wolf-headed enforcer watches over them, the tension palpable. The wolf-headed enforcer places an hourglass on the table, officially starting the countdown. The game master announces they have just 3 minutes to discuss and decide who to exile. Naohiko immediately panics, desperately proclaiming his innocence to the suspicious group. A red-haired student points out the obvious flaw: everyone will lie to avoid being eliminated. Ami voices the group's frustration, questioning how they can possibly choose a victim with no clues. Hayato's eyes narrow with focus, as he prepares to take control of the chaotic discussion. He proposes a simple test, asking everyone who is a guest to raise their hand. Naohiko's hand shoots up instantly, eager to prove his loyalty to the group. The red-haired student follows suit, raising his hand with a stern, unwavering expression. The orange-haired student also raises his hand, his gaze equally serious and determined. Ami raises her hand with a determined look, joining the others in claiming innocence. The purple-haired girl hesitantly follows, questioning the purpose of this sudden test. A blonde girl with pink tips also raises her hand, though her expression is filled with doubt. Hayato challenges the group, demanding that everyone who raised their hand now prove their role as a guest. 2 girls immediately call his bluff, but Naohiko confidently claims he has a way to prove his innocence. He proudly announces his proof. The word guest was written in kanji on his chopstick sleeve. The purple-haired girl scoffs at his logic, pointing out that poisoner is written with the exact same characters. The red-haired student mocks Naohiko, telling him he's only succeeded in proving his own foolishness. Ami glares at Hayato, frustrated that he's wasting their limited time on such a pointless exercise. The red-haired student coldly suggests they should just exile the idiots, putting both Hayato and Naohiko on the chopping block. Naohiko recoils in shock, protesting the idea of being exiled for his foolishness. The blonde girl nervously agrees, trying to de-escalate the rising tension. The table falls into a tense silence, as all eyes turn back to Hayato, who remains unfazed. Suddenly, the orange-haired student breaks the silence, with a wide, confident grin. He announces that Hayato's little test actually helped him find exactly what he was looking for. With a smug expression, he declares that he has successfully identified one suspicious person. He repeats his claim with relish, clearly enjoying the power he now holds over the group. The purple-haired girl immediately gets defensive, demanding to know who he's accusing. Naohiko also panics, desperately trying to deflect any suspicion from himself. The orange-haired student calmly explains that, since proving one's role is impossible, Hayato's attempt to do so makes him the most suspicious. He directly accuses Hayato of being a poisoner, pretending to be a guest. The entire table turns on Hayato, their suspicious gazes pinning him in place. Unfazed, Hayato calmly denies the claim, insisting he's been a guest all along. Ami challenges his pointless test, but Hayato reveals it was anything but random. He explains his test revealed 2 things, starting with how a poisoner would hesitate to raise their hand. Hayato theorizes, a traitor would overthink the situation, looking for a secret sign, only guests would know. He declares Naohiko trustworthy for his quick reaction and claims his sleeve's contents confirmed it. The punk student is completely won over by this logic, excitedly declaring his trust in Hayato. Emi buries her face in her hand, utterly exhausted by the flawed reasoning. The purple-haired girl muses that gaining an ally, even a foolish one, is a powerful move in this game. The red-haired student presses Hayato to reveal the second finding from his test. Hayato explains his test exposed one person who was noticeably late in raising their hand. He puts the blonde girl with pink tips on the spot, arguing a real guest would have reacted instantly. She panics, claiming she was just caught off guard by the suddenness of the question. The orange-haired student calls her a terrible liar, and deduces she must be the second poisoner. He grins, realizing that exiling her gives them a massive advantage, and credits Hayato's usefulness. He adds that he saw her flustered expression when she first read her role on the paper. The girl frantically denies the accusation, her composure completely shattered. The red-haired student coldly declares that they have no choice but to eliminate a poisoner. As the hourglass runs out, she makes one last desperate plea, insisting she's a guest. The orange-haired student confidently casts his vote for the blonde girl, trying to seal her fate. The red-haired and purple-haired students exchange a tense, silent look, weighing the decision. The accused girl's eyes widen in pure terror, a single tear betraying her fear. Hayato calmly leans back, completely derailing the vote, by refusing to exile her. The entire table stares at him in disbelief, questioning why he's protecting the very person he made suspicious. He clarifies his wordplay, explaining he only suggested she wasn't a guest, not that she was a poisoner. The purple-haired girl has a flash of insight, theorizing the girl might be the antidote master. The orange-haired student grits his teeth, his plan to eliminate her quickly falling apart. The punk student argues that if she were the antidote master, she should have spoken up to defend herself. The purple-haired girl counters that revealing her role would make her a target, making it clear they can't afford to lose her. The game master announces they have 1 minute left as the red-haired student declares, Ami isn't the antidote master. The rest of the table erupts in confusion, demanding to know how he could be so sure. In a stunning twist, the other blonde girl calmly reveals that she is the one with the antidote role. Ami stares in complete shock, completely thrown by this unexpected confession. The punk student gets agitated, demanding to know which of the two girls is telling the truth. Hayato calmly explains that, since either could be the antidote master, exiling them now would be a terrible strategy. The orange-haired student shifts the blame, pointing out that the purple-haired girl was also hesitant to raise her hand. The punk student immediately seizes on this, questioning if the purple-haired girl is a poisoner. Hayato notes that she seemed to be observing the situation before acting, making her just as suspicious. She slams the table in frustration, insisting she was just confused by Hayato's sudden test. The purple-haired girl defends her hesitation, explaining she saw Mai's fate, and knows how ruthless Hayato can be. The blonde girl questions this logic, but the purple-haired girl fires back with a sharp accusation of her own. The orange-haired student twists the knife, accusing them both of abandoning Mai in her final moments. Flustered, the girl tries to clarify she's only afraid of Hayato's methods, not opposing him directly. The punk student defends Hayato's reliability, and openly questions why the purple-haired girl is so hostile. The orange-haired student seizes the opportunity, framing her fear of Hayato as proof she's on the opposing side. He lands his final blow, directly accusing the terrified purple-haired girl of being one of the poisoners. The red-haired student quickly jumps to her defense, insisting she's just a naturally suspicious person. The orange-haired student smirks at the passionate defense, expanding his accusation to include both of them as the traitors. As the hourglass runs out, a chilling image of the game master mocks their past betrayal of Mai, adding pressure to the final vote. The final grains of sand fall, as a student realizes her classmates are the real monsters. With a manic grin, the game master gleefully announces that the time for discussion is over. The students bow their heads in tense silence, awaiting the secret vote. Myakuzuka explains the rules for the silent execution, letting the wolves handle the details. The wolf-headed enforcer moves to tap the first student, beginning the grim selection process. In the darkness, shadowy fingers point, casting their votes, and sealing someone's fate. A cruel smile spreads across the game master's face, savoring the inevitable betrayal. He points dramatically, ready to reveal the unfortunate soul chosen for exile. A wolf holds up the results, revealing a shocking split vote that condemns the blonde girl with pink tips. The metal restraint around her waist suddenly tightens, her face frozen in disbelief and terror. The purple-haired girl screams in protest, as the wolf-headed enforcer prepares to carry out the grim sentence. A menacing device glows with a sinister red light, signaling the start of the brutal elimination. The enforcer carries out the group's verdict in a shocking display, as the red-haired student watches in horror. The aftermath is a chilling scene, confirming the exiled girl has been permanently removed from the game. The other blonde girl recoils in disgust, as she's presented with a bowl. Her friend count now a grim 4. The students realize with dawning horror that the friend count dropping means they just eliminated an innocent guest. As the enforcer drags the victim away, the terrible truth is confirmed: they made a fatal mistake. A gloved hand calmly serves the next course, each bowl now a potential vessel for a deadly surprise. The wolf-headed figure looms over the remaining students, officially announcing the start of the poisoning phase. Myakuzuka appears with a sinister grin, instructing everyone to close their eyes for the secret selection. The game master whispers a chilling warning: peeking during the selection phase is a fatal mistake. He instructs the poisoners to secretly choose their victim, explaining a matching vote seals the target's fate. If the traitors disagree, a random player will be poisoned instead, adding a layer of cruel chance. The orange-haired student's face twists into a sadistic grin as he points, revealing himself as one of the poisoners. With their eyes closed, the remaining students wait in tense silence for the traitors to make their move. Myakuzuka announces the target has been selected and moves on to the special roles. The antidote master is now instructed to secretly choose one person to save from the poison. A glowing green liquid splashes into one of the bowls, signifying the antidote has been administered. With the secret selections complete, the game master orders everyone to begin eating to reveal the outcome. Naohiko stares at his bowl in resignation, understanding they must consume the food, regardless of the risk. With no other choice, the students begin to eat, each bite a potential death sentence. Hayato and the others nervously consume their meal, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. The blonde girl sips her soup, grimly aware that the poison is strong enough to take down an elephant. A tense silence falls over the table, as everyone finishes their bowl, waiting to see who the victim is. Hayato stares at his empty bowl, realizing with relief that no one has collapsed. The antidote master saved the target. Naohiko erupts with joy, celebrating the antidote master's power and their newfound hope for survival. The orange-haired student seethes with rage, his internal thoughts revealing his frustration at the failed poisoning attempt. The game master announces the start of the second round, forcing them to once again choose someone to exile. The red-haired student breaks down in anguish, screaming about their fatal mistake and demanding the real poisoners reveal themselves. He then directs his fury at Hayato, blaming his flawed test for leading them to eliminate an innocent classmate. The red-haired student furiously blames Hayato for the group's fatal error, while the orange-haired student smirks. The orange-haired student internally celebrates, realizing he can successfully shift all the blame onto Hayato. He deflects responsibility, claiming Hayato's confusing test is the only reason he made the false accusation. The blonde girl jumps to Hayato's defense, reminding everyone that he only provided information for them to judge. The purple-haired girl counters, arguing that Hayato's trick made it easy for anyone to misunderstand the situation. Ami joins the chorus of accusers, demanding Hayato apologize for the chaos his strategy created. Hayato calmly looks at the red-haired student, directly asking if he intends to vote for his exile. The red-haired student confirms without hesitation, furious that Hayato's actions led them all astray. The orange-haired student watches with satisfaction, silently urging the group to turn on Hayato and vote him out. Unfazed, Hayato turns to the orange-haired student, pointedly asking if he'll be casting a vote against him as well. The orange-haired student agrees, claiming it's the only way to make amends for their mistake. Hayato panics, realizing that, with 2 votes already locked in, his situation is looking grim. He turns to the blonde girl, Erika, hoping to find an ally in the rapidly shrinking group. Erika furiously confirms she's voting for him, declaring he's too dangerous to keep around. As the pressure mounts, Hayato has a sudden thought, questioning if the orange-haired student is a poisoner. The orange-haired student and Erika erupt in anger, accusing him of spouting nonsense to save himself. Erika places a hand on her chest, reaffirming her decision to vote against him. She screams in frustration, denying any knowledge and doubling down on her anger. The purple-haired girl dismisses his claims, insisting she won't be fooled again, and calls for his immediate exile. Hayato lowers his head, a look of understanding dawning on his face, as the pieces fall into place. Hayato suddenly apologizes to Naohiko, revealing he's not actually a guest. The revelation sends Naohiko into a panic, completely blindsided by the confession. The table erupts in confusion, wondering if Hayato is trying to recruit Naohiko to the poisoner side. Naohiko surprisingly accepts his fate, telling Hayato he's willing to be exiled alongside him. The orange-haired student grins triumphantly, realizing Naohiko's vote gives them the majority needed to eliminate Hayato. But Hayato calmly interrupts, asking for one last chance to speak before they cast their final votes. He stands and faces the suspicious group, capturing everyone's undivided attention. With a confident smirk, Hayato drops a bombshell, revealing he has a secret role: the poison taster.